All right, you guys, this is the start of a new chapter. So we're doing Note Taking Guide 2.1 today, and we're talking about different kinds of interest. Any times we have a savings account or we invest, we're paid interest. Two kinds of interest could be paid to us. The first kind is called simple interest. This is kind of hard to see on my paper, but I think you can see it better on yours. The simple interest formula is I equals PRT, where P is the principal or the starting amount, R is the interest rate. I'm going to put right here as a decimal point number. And then T is time in years. So we would just simply plug our information into that formula and we would get our answer out for the amount of interest that we are going to get paid or we would pay. So the simple interest formula is really that. It's a simple way to figure out how to find some interest on something. But most of the time in real life, we don't get paid simple interest, and we definitely don't pay back to the bank simple interest. We would pay something called compounded interest. And the way the compounded interest formula works is we get paid interest more than one time. So for instance, if we're talking about a savings account, at the end of every single month, the bank pays you interest. So say you start out with $200. At the end of the month, when the bank pays you interest, you might have $201. Then the next month, they're going to pay you interest on the $201, not just the $200. So they're going to compound money into your account and pay you interest on that. Where on the simple interest, if I invested $200, I would only get paid interest on the $200. If they paid me interest that month, they would still not figure that in. They would just figure out the interest again on the original amount, which is $200. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between simple and compound interest. Number 1 says, calculate the simple interest, then find the total amount owed. So the simple interest formula is I equals PRT. I actually gave you all of the information that you need, except for the interest amount that we're going to find. So we're going to substitute in the P in place of the P, which is $1,800. We're going to put the interest rate in, but I need to put it in as a decimal point number. Does anybody know what 3% is as a decimal point number? Yeah, it's 0.03 because you would take that decimal and you would move it 2 places, right? You could punch that in your calculator though and it will give you that decimal point number. So you're going to go 0.03 right here. And then it says the amount of time. Do you remember that it said in years? And 36 months is not in years. So how many years is this? Take it and divide by 12, right? Wouldn't that tell you there's 12 months in a year? So take 36 and divide it by 12. So how many years is that? Yeah, it's 3 years. So I would put 3 into my formula in place of the time in years. Then that's really just a simple plug it in your calculator work. So plug it in the calculator and let's get that answer out. So you have 1,800 times 0.03 times 3. And the amount of interest that you would have paid to you would be $189. Did someone else get that? You got? Oh, yeah, you guys did. You're right. My calculator's already... don't you hate it when your calculator already has junk in it and then you do it and it messes up? Mine already had a bunch of junk in it. So 162. Thank you for checking me on that, you guys. $162 is the interest. Again, thanks for correcting me on that. So the question says, find the total amount owed. Well, if they borrowed $1,800, they're going to have to pay the $1,800 as well as the $162 interest. So how much total are they going to have to pay? Yeah, $1,962. Does that make sense to everybody how we did that? All right, next problem, same thing. This one says calculate the simple interest, then find the total amount owed. So again, because it says simple interest, I know I'm using that formula I equals P times R times T, and I'm simply substituting my information in. My principal amount is $9,000. My interest rate as a decimal point number would be 0.05, because 5% is 0.05. Time in years, they already gave it to me in years. That was nice, so I can just plug it in and figure it out. So 9,000 times 0.05 times 5. I'm just going to let you guys tell me. Seems I'm not... Thank you, that is correct. Or the same thing I got at least. So either we're both wrong or no, you guys got it. Okay, so again, if it says find the total amount owed, then I started owing $9,000 because that's how much I borrowed. I'm going to have to pay that interest as well, which is the $2,250. So how much total is that? Yeah, $11,250. Okay. Questions on how I did that?
No.
Okay. Next one. Number 3 says write a compound interest function to model the situation. When it asks you to do that, you guys, it's really just asking you to substitute everything into that formula. So we're going to use the compound interest formula. We're going to substitute it in. That's going to give us a function. Then we're going to calculate the balance after the given number of years. So the compound interest formula is A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the NT. So I just wrote that formula down from up here. So up here it tells you everything that it is. This is your end amount. This is your principal. R is your interest rate, just like in the other formula. T is your time in years, just like in the other formula. The only thing that this formula has that the other formula didn't is N, which is the number of times per year that interest is compounded. So if it says your interest is monthly, how many times per year would that be? That would be 12, right? Okay. If it said quarterly, how many times per year would that be? That'd be 4 times per year, right? So whatever that tells us, that will be our end value. So we're going to invest $25,500. That would be our principal at an interest rate of 2.5%. I move my decimal point 2 places. That would be 0.025. I'm going to put the number of times per year that my interest is compounded. It says annually. Annually is 1 time per year. So I'm going to put 1 down there for my N value. And then again, it repeats my N and my T value. So N up top. And then T is the number of times per year, which is 7. And I can punch this in my calculator exactly the way that it appears. So if you go to your calculator and you start punching it in, you can do $25,500. Open your parentheses, do 1 plus, hit your fraction key, 0.025 over 1, arrow over to close your, and then up on your power. I like to write my power like this. I like to go parentheses and then do 1 times 7 in parentheses so that my calculator does it right. I mean, on this particular problem, you guys, the 1 doesn't really matter too much. 1 times 7 is 7. But if it was another number, we would want to make sure that it was in parentheses like that. If you hit enter, it tells you the total amount. That is the principal and the interest. It includes both of those things. So the amount would be $30,311.49 if I round that. Okay. So if I wanted to know how much interest I paid, I would have to subtract these two numbers, which I didn't ask you this time, but I will ask you in the future. But does that make sense that this is the total amount paid? That includes the starting principal as well as the interest. All right, next one is exactly the same kind of a problem. It's a compound interest formula. So we're going to write out that formula, and then we're going to substitute our stuff into that formula. It tells me the amount invested was $5,000. So that's my principal amount. It'll be 1 plus the interest rate. What number gets put in as the interest rate?
2.
So 0.02, right? Because I would move that decimal point 2 places. I imagine you could put that in as 2% because then your calculator would change it for you. I have never had a calculator that I could put a percent in until these ones, so I always change it to a decimal point number. The number of times per year the interest is calculated, it says monthly. So how many times per year is that going to be? 12. So 12 goes down on the bottom. And then again, the number of times per year is 12. And how many years would be my t-value? So 20 years. And so I'm going to substitute that into my calculator now, exactly the way that I just wrote that. So take a second and do that. Somebody let me know what you get when you get it. Did anybody get that? 7,456.64. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Okay, questions on how I did that? The one thing I do like about this section of the math is once we get it written out in the formula, it's really just calculator work, which kind of is nice. Okay, flip it over. A couple more problems on the back still. Number 5 says Derek deposited $3,000 in a simple interest account. Did you see how it told me which formula to use? It says use the simple one, which is I equals PRT. 3 years ago, he has earned $360 in interest so far. What is the interest rate for his account? So this time I am given the interest. They told me I earned $360. He started out by investing $3,000, which is his principal. I know that he did it for a total of 3 years. So I'm just looking for the interest rate. So I'm looking for R. So over here, I'm going to times the 3,000 and the 3 together to get 9,000. And then what am I going to do to get that 9,000 off the R? Divide. I'm dividing by 9,000. That's going to give me a decimal point number that I need to change to a percent. So I got 0.04. And then my percent would be 4% for my interest rate. Okay. Does that make sense how I kind of did that one backwards to find the interest rate? Questions on that?
Wait, how do you divide the 360 by the 9,000 you just done?
Yeah, I did 360 divided by 9,000. I got 0.04, and I just had to write that as a percent. Okay. Other questions? All right, next one. Stacy earns $549 in interest. That was compounded quarterly for 3 years. How much money did she initially invest if she earned 6%? So I'm already thinking on the top of my head that this might not work, because remember how I write the worksheets and sometimes I make mistakes? I think I might be missing a piece of information here, but let's fill it in to the formula and let's see if we were given enough information or not, okay? Because do you guys remember that I told you that this number over here, this amount, is your interest plus your starting amount? Did I give you a starting amount? No. So I could figure it out. I mean, it would be really messy, but this would have to be like the 549 plus P, and then I'd have a P over here. So let's do it for a minute and see how bad the math gets, okay? And then we'll decide that I just probably made a mistake on it or didn't, okay? The interest rate on this is 6%, so 0.06. The number of times per year that it is paid interest would be 4 because it's quarterly, so 4 times per year. And then 4 times time, which would be 3 years. Actually, this isn't going to be too bad. So let's just keep going with it. Okay. Let's get this whole thing right here as a number times by P. So can you punch that in your calculator for me? So 1 plus, do your fraction. If I round what I got, I'm going to go with 1.2. Does anybody else get that?
Do you include the P?
What?
Do you include the P?
No, the P is going to stay as a variable.
Okay.
So on my calculator, I got 1.1956. So I rounded that to 1.2. Did anybody else still get that?
Sure.
You're like, just hurry up and do the math, Mrs. Clark, right? To solve this, I have to get all the P's on one side together. So I'm going to subtract this P to be over here with that. This is a 1P right here. So I'm going to subtract the 1P over to the other side. So I get 549 equals 0.2P. Anybody know how I can solve that now? Yeah, divide by 0.2. That tells me the amount of money that I started out with was $2,745.
For 3 years, I'll give you 549 interest.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It was a pretty good interest rate. 6% is pretty good. Yeah. All right, I want you guys to look at this table right here. We're going to answer the questions to it. So this shows you simple interest. Again, I was telling you how that works. If you invest $1,000 at 6% interest, the first year you would get $1,060. The next year at simple interest, they're still only going to pay you on the $1,000, even though you really have $1,060 right now. So they pay you interest again on just that same $1,000, and you get another $60 in interest. Compound interest works differently. They pay you interest on that first amount. Did you notice how they were like the same the first year? I get that same $60 interest, but then instead of only paying me interest on the $1,000, compound interest pays me interest on the $1,060. Do you see how the second year I get $60 in interest, simple interest, and on compound interest I get $63.60 interest? Are you seeing how this is compounding, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, where this one stays the same? So answering the questions, it says, what kind of interest would you want to earn over 1 year? Well, over 1 year, would it matter? It wouldn't matter, right? I would just put that it doesn't matter because they're the same.
Oh, you right.
Okay. But what kind of interest would you want to earn if you were going to have interest paid to you for 5 years? Compound, because you're going to get interest on your interest. That's how compound interest works. So it kind of is just a problem to show you that compound interest grows faster if we're getting paid the same percent of money. Okay. So number 7, a little story problem, because we can't have this class without story problems. It says this: a bank offers you an annual rate of 5% compounded monthly. You invest $100 and plan on keeping it invested for 20 years. Calculate your balance after 20 years, then compare it to the amount you would have earned if the interest was simple instead of compound. So let's write down our compound interest formula and let's plug our information in there. And then we're just going to pretend like it was simple interest instead. And I'm going to put over there simple so we don't forget. And this one was compound. And we're just going to sub our information into those formulas. So what did I start out with? $100. The interest rate gets put in as 0.05. The number of times per year It's monthly, so it's 12. And then up top, 12 again times the time, which would be 20 years. Anybody want to make a guess how much money you would make on $100 after 20 years?
Probably like 500.
You think 500?
On $100 after 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time, it's 5%.
Well, yeah, if you put it in there and you don't touch it, it'll be interesting to see how much we earn here.
I'm guessing around like 500, 400.
All right, I messed up on my calculator. Somebody got that? I always forget to arrow over to close my parentheses. Does anybody ever forget to do that? Is that just me? Just me? I got 271.26. Is that what you guys got? Anybody? So this is the total amount. So how much interest was paid? We started out with $100. So the interest is 171.26, right? 20 years on $100. I mean, yeah, almost doubled your money there. Yeah, woo, you're like, woo. Well, I over doubled, but I almost doubled my interest from the money, I guess, is what I was trying to say. Okay, simple interest for the same thing. We started out with $100. The rate was 5% and the time is 20 years. So if we were only getting paid simple interest on that, we would have gotten paid $100. So, I mean, compound